Yesterday I made a video that upset people. No, most of you loved it actually, but I mentioned about recce being dangerous. It is, I'm sorry. I'm not doesn't mean that everyone who's ever practiced recce is an evil person or anything. It's just that recce is, from what I can tell, a method whereby demons use these recce masters, even the term masters, to harvest energy off suffering of people who are sick and ill. They use these recce practitioners as a kind of a farmer, and they farm and take the energy off the sick and dying people and keep them for themselves. I mean, I don't know anyone who ever got cured by recce, and I don't know, in fact, I've known loads who've actually suddenly died after it. That's not to say all people who enter into the recce thing are all monsters or evil. They're not. Many of them actually go in there believing they're doing the right thing, but unfortunately you're in a world where you're not in control. Now, speaking of a world that's not in control, I want to talk about the idea of environmancy, the idea of using the landscape as a magical ritual, a magical device. The forest. You've all seen movies. The idea of the forest as a weapon, just by its sheer existence, without it having to do anything, we can see in books and novels and films like Deliverance, The Blair Witch Project, Lord of the Flies, even the book version of The Shining, which was very well done in that manner. The idea that when a human is in a forest, that we're not really in control because we don't really know it, unless we're forest-bound people. And so you have this is why you had like Tacitus and Julius Caesar and even Marcus Aurelius. They had great difficulty during the with the Germanic wars, with the Teutonic tribes, because they would fight in the forest. The forest was not a good place for Roman tacticians to operate, even though eventually they were successful in many cases. They got their biggest hidings in the forest, not just by the Teutonic tribes, but remember the Iceni, who hammered the shit out of the Romans in Britain, were actually winning, and probably would have won if they had remained in the forest as a kind of a guerrilla army. The Romans obviously were afraid of the forest because they weren't ready for it. The idea that you can beckon your enemy into the forest. Now you see like films like the Blair Witch Project. You don't see nothing. Nothing happened. The monsters were inside the mind of the people who were the filmmakers of the film, and very well done. And even these things made from twigs and these kind of sigils that were hanging around, even the very sight of them deep in a remote forest was deeply traumatizing to people, as it would be. There's not supposed to be anyone out there, and if they are, they're to be consumed almost entirely with survival. And if they're able to survive that well, how good are they at magic? This is the same thing. It creates a sense of terror. The forest is where you're not in control. So you're in the forest and I want to absolutely terrorize you to change your consciousness. All I have to do is keep making funny noises, going wah, 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 and all these kinds of things, and circling your tent from, you can't see me. Your flashlight will only penetrate so far into the forest because it will only go, the trees will invariably get in the way. There's no way out. I'm out there, and you don't know what I am. All you're hearing is a noise that's coming from different directions around the tent. Your consciousness is then heavily shifted. You're then in a situation where you are easily manipulated and easily controlled. So if I was working with somebody who was inside the tent working with me, they could do something like you know, they could arrange something to have them robbed or something, saying, look, give me your money and I'll go out there and try and pay them off. And they would take the money off and go out there and give it to me. It's a kind of like, that would be like a black magic aspect of it. A white magic aspect of it would be protection. You know, we saw this during World War II. Many people, including the actor who starred in the movie Fahrenheit 451, they were people who ran off, all during World War II, who ran off into the deep forests of Eastern Europe and survived and waited until the war was over. Jews, all kinds of people. People living in the cities, and they found ways to survive, and that was a kind of a white magic thing. They could not get them. They survived the World War II and particularly the brutality of the Eastern Front by going into the forest, and that was a kind of environmancy. the idea of using the environment as a magical spell, in this case to survive, to absolutely survive. There's lots of things like that. I mean, you watch like Bushcraft TV series. I mean, when Ray Mears is making a spear or a gaff to catch fish, that's a magic wand when you think about it. When he's, you know, chopping down trees, he's actually involved in a kind of a magical rite. He's harvesting the energy of the forest in order to shift and change his own consciousness. You see, this is one of the reasons why it's very difficult for anyone to put a real meaning on the term magic. Magic is probably the most difficult word in the English language to actually describe what it means, because it's so vast and varied. And a lot of it isn't even spiritual either. It's about consciousness, it's about surviving where you can survive, such as coming into the deep forest and surviving. And this is an little understood aspect of this. There's also the idea of when, you know, continuing on from the Blair Witch thing, placing the bodies of you're placing the bodies of soldiers and stuff, your enemies, and on, you know, stripping them naked and hanging them up on top of trees. That's a deep magic spell. Will terrorize anybody that come into the woods. Hammering sigils, putting marks on trees. I do that all the time. I mean, I was always involved in those kinds of artsy things. I remember back in Van Cortlandt Park in the 80s, I used to get just as a test. Remember those Green Army men, those cheap plastic soldiers? I used to get them and stretch their heads really long, tie their heads in a knot, and then nail them at different trees inside Van Cortlandt Park, just to see if anyone would notice. And sure enough, the local paper, the Yonks or the North Bronx, whatever, the Riverdale, this, or the Yonkers, that Robin right here, who wanted to know the mystery of the Green Army men with their necks tied, nailed to trees. I was doing things like this all the time. This was just I've always been involved in magic and experiments that way, just to see how I can alter consciousness. A lot of this had to do with I just arrived in America. I had no money, no prospects, no way of surviving, so it was a ritual in order to sort of put my energetic mark upon America. So immediately within a couple of months I was in the newspapers, not me directly, but my magic, and it served me very well from that point on. All kinds of, like, I got to join the children's zoo, I ended up working Wall Street, I had an incredible, amazing life, and that was because I put my energetic marker on trees in Van Cortlandt Park. Also Van Cortlandt Park, I tapped into the sinisterness of it, because one of the reasons I got interested in Van Cortlandt Park is because that's where allegedly the Process Church had been doing their rituals up around that area, and also Berkowitz, the son of Sam. It was notorious for serial killers and stuff like that, and interested in it for that way anyway. It was a place associated with the occult. I don't know about nowadays. It's mostly parks that the sports are played in. Things like cricket. It's bizarre. You go to New York and there's all these black guys playing cricket, but and there's a kind of a ridge behind it. In that ridge is all these woodlands and forests, and even though it's in the Bronx, it's still got the sense of remoteness about it. You could do anything in there. You wouldn't want to go in there at night, even though I did. And so that was like a performance art project meets Environmancy meets Sigil. Was those Green Army men with their necks elongated and tied in a knot and hammered to trees, and it got me in the papers within a week, 2 weeks, and that was a charge for me to go and take on America. And this is where I've always practiced magic. That was a kind of a form of chaos magic coupled with environmancy, but this is why we practice magic, to increase our charm, to increase our charisma. Even if nobody knows it's us that's doing it, it still feeds us, it still helps us, it still keeps us in a position of control, rather being subject to the, fate or agents of fortune. Hope you're enjoying all these magical vlogs. I'm giving away an awful lot of my secrets.